Okay, we have a duly noticed work session at 10 a.m. We do not need a quorum to open a work session, so I'm going to go ahead and fire it up because it is 10 a.m. We'll do a quick pledge. We may recess the work session, but we will at least start it on time. So, uh, the clerk, you want to lead us up, Madam Clerk? Okay. So we've got three bills that we're going to deal with today. We're obviously not going to vote on them right now. I have, for the committee, I have distributed an amendment to SB 170. Um, it should be on your desk. Uh, I know I gave it to everybody but myself. Hold on.
Did they steal yours again?
You might have. Let me see. No, it's all right. All right, there we go. All right, I gave it to everybody. Like I said, I gave it to everybody but myself. Um, listening to the committee's discussion, or rather hearings, from SB 170, I reinstated the crossed out lines and added a provision afterwards that says, provided that provided that the after school and holiday increase in capacity is permitted by the state fire code and in compliance with any local ordinances. So I'm hoping that my goal there, and we'll discuss it when we will discuss that when we actually take up the amendment, but my goal there is that will satisfy all parties involved, leave the after-school increase in place for where it currently exists or is allowable, but also recognizes that state fire code and stuff like that, you have to follow that. So that's my goal there. Representative McWilliams came in, but I didn't see her. I believe she had an amendment, or she was drafting an amendment to. We'll gather her when he comes back. On SB 221, obviously, when we get to executive, we'll actually vote on that. My hope is that a member will make a motion to retain that bill. I don't believe we are going to do anything with it today, but I think it would be wise to hold on to it in case we find something later in the year that we want to grab. We do have a vehicle. Not that we're allowed to have placeholder legislation, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but we can have placeholder legislation if you actually read our rules. So there she is. You're distributing your amendment to SB 94, I assume? Excellent. Thank you. Okay. And Representative McWilliams, can you give one to our friends at DHHS? Okay. So we have these distributed amendments. We have my stated purpose on SB 221. Does any other member have anything they'd like to say while we're in a work session before we begin executive session at 10:15? Does any member of the public, we are in a work session, we're allowed to hear from the public. Does any member of the public wish to look at the relative amendments that have been distributed and opine? All right, if that's the case, I'm going to recess our work session until 10:14. I'll reconvene it at 10:15 and immediately close it in case we want to continue our work session for whatever reason. But I'll see you guys at 10:14, so in 10 minutes.
to you. Remember,
All right, it's we're 1 minute past, so I'm going to reopen our work session and immediately end it. Um, Now I will open up our executive session. We will take up SB 94. Is there a motion on SB 94?
I move to amend it.
We need an ought to pass motion first before we can move to amend it. So is there an emotion? Is there
I
an
move
ought to pass motion
I move to
for?
pass.
All right, there's an ought to pass motion by Representative McWilliams. Is there a second for? There's a second by SB 94. Is there an amendment offered for SB 94?
There is. I would like to offer Amendment 2023-1810H.
All right, Representative McWilliams offers House Amendment 2023-1810H to SB 94. Is there a second? We'll take a second from Representative Ball since you're the clerk. It makes the life a little easier. We are now in discussion on the amendment. Is there discussion on the amendment? Representative McWilliams, would like to speak to your motion?
I would, please, and thank you, Chair. So during the hearing on SB 94, we had a bit of a discussion about what may happen if the age of a child with special educations or disabilities is changed in the future, and the fact that restricting to a certain age might actually lock us into needing to do an amendment as a committee or even as the entire House and Senate. So rather than locking it in, the intention of this amendment is to simply refer to the definitions under RSA 186C2 regarding receiving special education and related services by the child's school district. So we're putting this over to education, and if they decide to raise the age of services in the future, this will move in lockstep with it. So that's the intention of this amendment, is just to not lock children who fall under that bucket into a certain age restriction.
Excellent. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Does anyone have any objection to a member from DHHS commenting on the amendment? We are in executive session, so it would be without objection. Without objection? That's fine.
Thank you, Chair and Representative of the Committee. I'm Melissa Clement, Chief of the Childcare Licensing Unit, and I am definitely in favor of the amendment, but I just realized one thing in reading it. If we limit it to a child with a disability as defined under RSA 186C2, that is a New Hampshire amendment, and it may cause issues for our out-of-state students who wouldn't fall under that definition because they're coming from another state, so they're not under that definition, because it's not just New Hampshire students that would be in these residential programs. We also have students from Massachusetts, from other states who are coming into our residential programs. They're being placed there by an educational placement, but it's not under that statute. It would be under the statutes in their state. So I like the idea behind this and not trying to limit it to an age, but I'm also worried about how we might be able to address the needs of those that are coming from other states and making sure we're allowing them to have that residential care as well and remain in care. And I'm sorry, as I was reading it, that just came to me. It wasn't.
We have options. Is this a general concern for the committee? Do we want to proceed forward with the amendment? Do we want to recess the bill? What's kind of the general disposition of the committee for this? You're recognized, Representative Williams.
So I guess I'm a little bit concerned because we have kids who come into the schools from out of state all the time. And I would defer to however the schools are treating those children who are coming in from out of state, even if they're out of state children. And so I do think that this definition encompasses that. I'm just pulling it up to read, exactly how it works here.
It does include every person under the age of 21, so you do have a very nice coverall to begin with.
Yeah. So I know this is, legislating in the middle of an exec session. It's hard because we just want to vote yes or no on it. So I'm just pulling up the definitions, and it looks like it's pretty encompassing here. Child with a disability shall include a child ages 18 to 21 who was identified as a child with a disability and received services in accordance with an individual education program, but who left school prior to his or her incarceration. Whoa, okay. or was identified as a child with a disability but did not have an IEP in his or her last educational institution. So that could mean out of state. I'm just, looking at that. So I think we probably would want to hear from someone on the school side, how they handle this for people who come from out of state, because it seems like this doesn't necessarily say you have to have received services in New Hampshire in order to qualify for the definition of 186C2. But we may not have that person in this room.
Representative Page.
Just looking at the definition, it does say evaluated by a school district according to rules adopted by the State Board of Education, which I assume would be New Hampshire. So I want to thank Ms. Clement for bringing this up, representing a district where we have a very large number of students from Maine in our centers. That is definitely a consideration. I'm glad you raised it, and it had not occurred to me either.
Okay, so we have options here. I'll go back to my original question, which is how does the committee feel we should handle this, move forward? We want to recess the discussion of the underlying bill to an executive session, which I would have to notice for next week, most likely to make our deadlines, which is fine. I'll see you all on next Wednesday. Sorry, Representative Page. It's only a 18-minute drive for me. It's only yes, Representative Ball.
I just had a question, I'm sorry, just for a clarification. It does say or special education and related services identified by the child's school district, and it doesn't specify if it's in-state or out-of-state. So doesn't that cover all school districts?
Yes. And we do have this vehicle called legislative intent, which is if it is put in our clerk's note, that include out-of-state. First, they'd have to find somebody to sue, then they'd have to find somebody to go through the notes. So we do have this lovely vehicle called legislative intent, and if that is our intent, is to include students from out of state, and that is how this committee is reading it, and that is how it is reflected in the official record taken by our wonderful clerk, then that does actually become law like that. It just makes somebody having to put it together in the future have a little bit of a headache, but we can always adjust that later. So is that the disposition of this committee? Is that we believe this encompasses out of state? Yes, Representative Ball.
Sorry, excuse me again. If we inserted just the word home school district, would that make a difference in understanding that it's both in and out of state? If we say the child's home school district, or that may not be relevant.
I guess my response to that was if we amend the amendment, we can then just do it. We don't have to like bend it at that point. We can actually just explicitly state what we want. We don't have to be clever if we've amended the amendment. Yes, Representative Neal.
I may be reading the RSA wrong or incorrectly, but when I'm reading, the rules as adopted by the State Board of Education, it's State Board of Education, not capitalized. So it okay. So we can't use that to just say that would encompass Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine.
Yeah, I mean they would have to. The people interpreting the legislation that we pass would have to. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to read it literally, right? So if the literal reading of it means only New Hampshire students, then we have a problem. If it's up for debate, then they will go to legislative intent, which we get to dictate via the record. And then they go to the courts. Yes, Representative Neal.
This may be the lawyer in me, but playing with the words here. I mean, so we're saying, as the amendment's written, up to the age of a child with a disability is defined in RSA 186C2, and they're receiving special education from their school district. But whether this definition we have here under RSA 186C2 is exactly the same as what's in Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, or any of these other states, to me, may not be relevant as long as the child is meeting this definition. So wouldn't it still apply and cover that child?
It seems like it certainly could to me. If you catch my drift, it seems like it certainly could to me. Maybe when we meet next year, we'll fix that. So they really know what we mean. Is everybody on board with that? All right. Is there any further discussion on the amendment?
Thank you.
And our legislative intent is very clear. It means all students. Regardless, our legislative intent is very clear. That's why I will be voting for the amendments because it includes all students. There we go. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Sorry.
Yes.
Representative O'Neill. Representative Page.
Yes.
And the chair.
Chair votes yes.
All right. 9 yeas, 0 nays.
And with that, Amendment 2023-1810H is adopted to SB 94. We are now on discussion on the underlying bill. The motion is now ought to pass as amended. Is there discussion on the bill as amended? Yes, Vice Chairman.
Move, thank you. I would like to move OTPA on House Bill 94.
Okay, I believe I'll second it. We're on OTPA for the underlying bill. Is there discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
All right. Representative DeSimone. Representative Phillip.
Just a second, Madam Clerk. Make sure when you vote that you turn your mics on. As somebody who watches these at home, because that's my life, can't hear you. Can't hear how you vote if you don't turn your mic on.
I will repeat my yay vote.
Thank you. Representative Ball.
Yes.
Representative Nelson.
Yes.
Representative Wallner.
Yes.
Representative Cretion votes yes. Representative McWilliams.
Yes.
Representative O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Page.
Yes.
And the chair.
Chair votes yes.
9-0.
And with that, SB 94 will be reported out of committee as ought to pass as amended. Representative McWilliams, will you do the committee report, please? Thank you.
For the record, yes.
With that, I'm closing the executive session on SB 94. I'm opening the executive session on SB 170, which is titled, here we go. Relative to small group child daycare centers, would somebody like to make a motion for SB 170? Somebody
I'll
like to
move
make a
ought to
motion?
pass.
Representative Page moves ought to pass. Is there a second? Representative DeSimone seconds. With that, I will recognize myself, and I would like to introduce Amendment 2023-1899H. I would love it if somebody would second me. Thank you, Representative DeSimone, for the second. We are now on discussion on the amendment. I will again recognize myself to speak to my own amendment. Gotta love parliamentary procedure. So after listening to the concerns about the issues surrounding the fire code and the confusion, I I unstruck the lines that reduced the before and after school care and holiday care, but I included in the RSA what I would call clarifying language, so that to reduce the confusion, so the language is very simple. It unstrikes the lines and inserts the clause afterwards, provided that the after school and holiday increase in capacity is permitted by the state fire code and in compliance with any local ordinances. So I did that to relieve the confusion. I want to pass the underlying bill. I'm not discussing the underlying bill right now, but I was going to have issues voting for it if it could be in any which way interpreted as potentially constraining new supply of childcare in the state of New Hampshire. So I tried to strike that middle ground of keep the bill. If it actually changes nothing in terms of functionality, that is my goal. But I think it would. My hope is that it assuages the concerns from the public about confusion for new centers, but also what I believe are my concerns, which are about limiting potential increase in capacity, which is what I view as the current crisis of childcare in the state of New Hampshire. So that's my opening salvo on the amendment. I'm sure others would like to speak to it. Or maybe they wouldn't. Okay. Ms. McWarner?
Well, I would like to hear from the licensing and from the fire code people about how this amendment,
They're showing you what they want. Is-
I would like to
You wanna
hear
hear?
how,
Okay.
I know you like the amendment. I guess I'd like to hear how in everyday life, how does this affect what providers are going to be able to, how many children providers can care for?
Okay, without objection, because once again, we are in executive, so without objection.
Thank you, Representative Wallner. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, you want to know how this is going to impact day-to-day life. By able to specifying clearly in the statute, which we can also communicate to providers, we're able to show that this is what the statute will require, but you also have to be in compliance with whatever your local ordinances require, and also whatever the state fire marshal requires for the numbers that you wish to care for. Right now, with the bare bones definition, just saying that you could have 9 children as a family childcare, or you could have 17 children because of the additional school age, they think that they're able to do that, and then they're finding along the way that their local codes won't require it, or the state fire marshal codes won't require it, and it just creates a lot of angst for them because they were under the impression I can have 17 children, and thinking that they could apply for that, but then finding out there are other restrictions along the way that's preventing them from doing so. So it'll help, and it'll also help with the local, both like planning boards and zoning committees, because they tend to adopt our definitions. They will see that clearly stated there, so they will have to look at them, what their local ordinances are, to see if they have any impediments or what restrictions they have.
So you wrote to us that there were probably around 40 providers right now who have the license that allows them to go up to, what is it, 17, I guess. How will this affect those 40?
It actually shouldn't affect them at all now,
So
because they
they
will remain as
they
is.
will remain, they won't need
Yep.
the grandfather clause.
No,
No.
yeah, we won't have
Okay.
to change any of the license types. Everything will remain as is, and this will clarify the confusion moving forward.
Okay. And new providers that came in who meet the codes are going to be able to go up to 17?
If their local ordinances allow for that, and if their state fire code allows for that, if they've been approved for that number through their local fire inspection, yes.
Okay. So I have one more question.
Of course.
So one of the solutions you put forward originally when we saw this bill was that people who had licenses for up to 6 family child care providers would now be called group family child care. We don't need to do that now?
No, we won't
Okay.
need to do that.
Great, thank you.
Representative Simone?
Thank you. I'd like to move the question if the committee is amenable.
We can do that. Our rules are we operate under Masons, and moving to questions kind of a weird one in our rules. So we'll finish. We'll let all the members who want to speak. But then yes, because it's I don't want to get by. If this was Robert's Rules of Order, you could absolutely move to previous question, and we would do that right away.
Hopefully this isn't opening up a can of worms, but we got this beautiful list of residential zoning ordinances for family childcare, and a lot of them have, it seems, much stricter restrictions on the number of children that can be cared for. Does adding in compliance with any local ordinance mean that, or make any change to how they have to do that? Does it restrict the number of children?
It's
in
certainly
a way
not
that wouldn't
because they should
otherwise?
be already in compliance with local ordinances. So it's clarifying language, right? So it's clarifying. So in theory, if they already have the ability to do this, which they clearly do from our excellent document from our committee researcher, they already have to abide by them. So it doesn't, that part of it doesn't change anything. I would never bring forward something that would restrict childcare. I would hope you would know me better than that. Further discussion on the amendment. Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Do we have a motion?
Yes, we are. We have the motion. The amendment has been moved to adopt. I believe you seconded it, so we're all set. We are,
We have a motion to, ought to pass as amended.
we have to pass the amendment first. We haven't voted on the amendment. I feel good about it, but we have to
Thank
do
you.
the vote first.
I forgot where we were. I'm old.
Thanks for giving me a little extra time to get my paperwork. Representative DeSimone,
Yes.
Representative Ball,
Yes.
Representative Nelson,
Yes.
Representative Wallner,
Yes.
Representative Cretin votes yes. Representative McWilliams,
Yes.
Representative O'Neill,
Yes.
Representative Page,
Yes.
and the clerk, or chair, sorry.
The chair votes yes. The chair's own amendment. Uh,
All right, 9-0.
9-0 with that. Amendment 1899H is added to SB 170. We are now on the underlying bill as amended. We have to do a new motion. Is there a motion to ought to pass as amended?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second? Representative Nelson seconds the motion of ought to pass as amendment. We are now on discussion of the underlying bill as amended. Is there discussion on SB 170 as amended? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Representative DeSimone,
Yes.
Representative Ball,
Yes.
Representative Nelson,
Yes.
Representative Wallner,
Yes.
Representative Cretin votes yes. Representative McWilliams,
Yes.
Representative O'Neill,
Yes.
Representative Page,
Yes.
and the chair.
Chair votes yes.
9-0.
With that, SB 170 will be reported out of committee as ought to pass as amended. I will take care of the committee report. And I'm now going to close the executive session on SB 170. I'm going to open the executive session on SB 221. Is there a motion on SB 221? Yes, Representative DeSimone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion to retain Senate Bill 221.
I forgot to read the title. Establishing a study committee to examine daycare access and affordability. Is there a second on the motion to retain SB 221? Representative McWilliams, second. Is there discussion on the motion to retain SB 221? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
My goodness. All right, Representative DeSimone,
Yes.
Representative Ball,
Yes.
Representative Nelson,
Yes.
Representative Wallner,
Yes.
Representative Cretin votes yes. Representative McWilliams,
Yes.
Representative O'Neill,
Yes.
Representative Page,
Yes.
and the chair.
Chair votes yes. And with that, SB 221 is retained. I will be closing the, actually, I'm going to pause this because I can't close it just yet because we're still meeting. I'll send something around to the committee over our next two meetings about what we're going to talk about. It's going to be things relative to SB 221, which we just retained, as well as the Granite States for Quality Access Program, and some other ideas that I got kicking around my head. So be on the lookout for that. And with that, I will close our executive session, and I will see you all tomorrow on the House floor. Thank you.